My name is Mike Lee, and I graduated in 2003. I played, all over the forward pack. I played very few games at front row in college by design. Mostly 6, 7, and 8. Couple seasons I got to play center. It was obviously, minus, 50 or 60 pounds from where I am now. Played all 4 years, all 8 seasons. And I was lucky enough that when I was a freshman, I had tried out for lacrosse. And I was really dead set on making the team, and I worked really, really hard to get in shape. So it was probably in the best shape of my life when I showed up to play rugby. And since I obviously got cut from the team, I was a little bit angry about everything. So in practice, I really, I don't know what kind of impression I made, but I knew I really was leaving it out there. And so I was fortunate enough to, basically play A-side, from a couple games in for, the entire time I was here. So I really enjoyed it right from the start. It was a wonderful experience. I was an officer of the club. I can't remember. My freshman year I was not elected to a position. After my sophomore, because we always had elections in the fall. So second semester sophomore year, first semester junior year, I was match secretary. And then second semester junior year, first semester senior year, I was president of the club. The club was mainly run by the students, right? Set practice times, but you liaised with the school to get field times, buses to away games, and I have to say, in retrospect, from running men's rugby clubs, the amount of resource the school gave us, for very little in return was actually great, right? The field times, my freshman year, we practiced on Barlow because they were doing construction on Growart. But all the other seasons, we practiced and played in Growart Field. Usually never really had an issue with weather where we were not allowed on the field. I can remember one game we had to find an alternative location, and we ended up playing at University. We were playing at Sacred Heart. The Yankees hosted us at University of Bridgeport on their lawn there. But really, we just kind of said we did 100% of running the club, but we just asked the school. We just said, okay, we need a bus this day at this time, and there was one there for us, right? And they were really, really good about it. We'd walk into the varsity locker room and say, we need 3 jugs of water, we need the pads for the goalposts, we need the flags, and it would all just be there, and the school was really actually, in retrospect, fantastic about doing those things for us, which can be really, ordering balls or, any jerseys or anything else. We had a budget that we were given by the school, which might have been $6,000 for the year or something along those lines, and we had to stick within that budget. But more or less, we ran the whole club. We had coaches. My freshman year, Tom Kramer coached first semester. My second semester freshman year, some of the guys working at Yankees started showing up, one of which was Mick Mulvihill, who was an Australian. He coached for a few semesters, but the coaching was very ad hoc, right? At the end of the day, the decisions were made by the forward captain and the back captain. The team was selected, and the coaches were more there for instructional purposes, to tactics, technique, that sort of thing to help you along. But, aside from, the add-ons that were coming from the outside, 100% student-run, student-organized. I don't know at what point Fairfield U transitioned from Met New York to New England, but all 4 years I was at Fairfield U, we were in New England, and in the fall, for whatever reason, none of the years I was there we could really put it together. I'm going to say maybe I only won 1 game in the fall in all 4 years. We lost a couple close games. But we would, I played Yale all 4 years, Trinity all 4 years, Southern, Central, Coast Guard, Providence College. Western Connecticut was one of our league opponents. And that's really our fall schedule. And the fall there were always some obstacles because school would start, there would be a weekend, the next weekend the games would start, right? So it's just hard to get back in the swing of things, and it seemed like you lose your first 2 or 3 games. By the last 2 or 3 games, only a 5-6 game schedule. You didn't have, you're 0-3 or 0-4. It's hard to really get yourself motivated at that point to really buckle down and turn the tide. Whereas in the spring, it was the complete opposite. We would start typically meeting at the Recplex, practicing on the basketball courts, mid to late January. And by our first weekend of March, you've had over a month of practice. And I don't know that we really, I can't remember losing any or very many games in the spring. Quite the contrast, and in retrospect, you can probably say it was the amount of time of preparation. We played in the spring. We had played a lot of Catholic schools. We played Sacred Heart, not just because they're local, Quinnipiac because they were local, Fordham, Providence, Boston College, Holy Cross. I'm going to say one year Catholic might have come up to play us, Catholic or Loyola, but one of the teams from down there. Siena, Bryant, and I can't quite. I don't think we varied too much because the teams would come and we'd have such a good time with them. And unless it was a tournament, we almost never played away in the spring because you send somebody, as a match secretary, you'd send somebody an email, "Do you want to come play us?" The response is instantaneous, absolutely, right? And so you'd get unsolicited offers from other teams to come here and play because obviously after the games we'd go to the beach. It would be a great time for everyone. We had the best, probably one of the best rugby fields at the time in the area. So a couple of years, we did it twice when I was at Fairfield where we had a 3-way Catholic tournament. I think one time we did it with Holy Cross, Boston College, and Fairfield, and another time we did it with Providence, Boston College, and Fairfield. So one year in particular, the year, it was my sophomore year of college. We had a guy show up with, an eyebrow ring and, frosted tips, just looking like the worst Euro trash you've ever seen. Well, of course, this was Brad Troup, and he was a South African player, right? And he was from Pretoria, and he was just so skillful, right? And then we had a few guys that quit the football team that were from northern New Jersey that played at some of the top high school football programs in the country, just didn't like the football team. And then at the time, and it was very prevalent, I guess it still is at Fairfield, to recruit soccer players that represented New Zealand. So, in the past World Cup, one of the goalie for New Zealand in the soccer World Cup was a Fairfield U student. So we had these 2 Kiwis, one at 9, playing scrum half, Brad, our South African fly half, and another New Zealander at 12, right? And then in the forward pack, it was a pretty experienced group of guys that have been playing for years and added 2 kind of the best athletes I've ever seen come and play rugby at Fairfield. So we were winning games 60 and 70 and 80 to nothing. And one of the games that will always stick out to me is we beat Providence like 55 to nothing, and the previous spring they played for the national championship, right? So it's still to this day, having played rugby for 15 years, the best team I've ever been on, because it was just devastating. And it's everybody that knows about rugby, it's a momentum game. So as you start scoring, as one guy makes a big hit, as the next guy, it becomes a waterfall. And so I can honestly, that was the spring of so that was my junior year. So the spring of 2002, we were undefeated by some margin, and I'm going to say we went to Quinnipiac had a tournament, and somehow Quinnipiac set it up so they played 2 games there in the final, and we ended up playing 5 games to get in the final. And the closest game was 30 to nothing, and they were like 20-minute halves. So we really, at that point, that was definitely the peak of my Fairfield U rugby career. One of the New Zealanders was a freshman, all right, and he was here on soccer scholarship, so he really should have no business playing. The other one graduated. And then a few other players in the forward pack graduated, and then a couple guys went abroad, and it was very hard to replicate the following fall the same team. However, in the spring the next year, we had a pretty talented team. Just to go back to that season. So that year, the fly half, Brad, went on to play college all-stars, and he was actually an All-American. For USA Rugby. He didn't get picked to tour, but the guy that played ahead of him went on to play for the Eagles, and Brad, I guess the next year, he lived down at the beach in one of the small houses and tried to do a front flip off it, shattered his ankle, and never quite got to that upper echelon of rugby he was at that point in time. But we didn't have quite all the pieces the following seasons, but still played some pretty good games. And like I said, our schedule in the fall was always tough because Central Connecticut University just, well drilled, a lot of big guys, and Yale and Trinity. And if those are the only teams that you're playing, and Yale has got a cast of characters from all over the world, right? Full-time coach. And Trinity kind of the same thing. You're losing close games, but it's hard to get the W, and then then the season's over. Yeah. I have to say that absolutely, because particularly my freshman and sophomore year, there was a group of guys that were 2 years ahead of me that lived at the Last Call, which is a house on the corner of Roland and Beach Road, down by the beach club, kind of away from everything. Well, there was this huge basement there. You could fit a couple hundred people in the basement, or I don't. That's what it seemed like. I don't know the actual number, but there was always something going on, and there was always rugby guys at the middle of it everywhere. And I don't know that we weren't accepted, but I do know that every Saturday when we would be down at the Point, people that had nothing to do with rugby would always be, there was a tremendous amount of support. And in the spring especially, and driving in today, because I came up by the School of Business and drove by the field at Barlow, which is where we played my freshman year, I'll never forget just seeing that whole field packed one of these spring weekends that you get in Fairfield in April, and there was, who knows how many people were there, but it was just absolutely packed. The whole crowd would come down, and then it would just continue into the night, and some of the best memories of my life. Groward Field was not used in the, I'm not sure about the spring of 1999, but definitely the fall of 1999 and the spring of 2000, Groward Field was not used. They were resurfacing Groward Field. It was used the rest of the time I was there until 2003. Barlow Field, playing games there, it was all right. You were isolated from the school. It felt like you had your own little alcove, and it'll always be a sweet spot, a sweet place in my mind, a nice place in my mind, because it's the first time I ever played rugby was on Barlow Field, right? That's where they had the practice. The first practice you walk to, I'm somewhere behind Costco and Claver looking for a field that somebody told me, and I bump into two other guys with cleats walking out of it, and they're of course like, are you looking for rugby practice? Yes. They're like, yeah, it's not over here, it's over there. So a lot of good memories on there, and I'll never. One in particular is when we beat Boston College. And at the time, they were a Division I team playing in New England's Division I, which is one of the better collegiate divisions in the country. And they came down here and we beat them, and we beat them by a couple of tries. And that, for me, we maybe won the first game that fall, lost the first game that spring. So at the time, it seemed like a long period without winning a game, but I still enjoy the satisfaction of knowing that we didn't beat them by a little. We beat them by 2 or 3 tries, and they're a school of 15,000, we're a school of 3,000. And the next day, one of the guys who went to Boston College High School was talking to them, and they're like, they didn't want to stay that late for the drink up or stay overnight because they said, well, we have all-star tryouts tomorrow. And John Pettinelli, I'll never forget him being like, all-star tryouts? Who's an all-star on your team? So, so we played there the fall and the spring. of my freshman year, which was the fall of 1999 and the spring of 2000. So we had two things. We had a Christmas party, okay, at the end of the calendar year, right? And then in the spring, they had a senior day, which was, a barbecue and relatively tame by rugby standards. But that was a good time. The Christmas party, so, they deemed it was always going to be a theme party, and somehow all 4 years, and it could be a rotating theme or whatever you want, but for whatever reason, all 4 years when I was there, the theme was that like all the guys on the rugby team would dress like women. And so, of course, it being that time of year, we'd make some sort of cider drink. So, invariably there'd be 6 dudes in dresses getting out at Stop and Shop to buy all these gallons of cider. So going in and buying that, and seeing the looks on, people's faces, or, and like, I'll never forget being at the last call and like all dressed up, and they're like, we need you to go to the store to buy more cider. Take Mush's minivan, it might have been, here's $40, buy as much as you can. And John Doral saying, if anybody asks why you're dressed that late, just look them dead in the eye and go, what are you talking about?
Oh, man.
I have a few favorite memories. So one was, my freshman year beating Boston College, right? I'll never forget that feeling, even like 6 or 8 hours after that game, just knowing, man, there's no feeling like winning a rugby game, right? And it's these guys that are around you all the time, and winning that together and going through that battle and succeeding, there's no real, that was the first kind of real big win we had. My sophomore year, somehow I was playing outside center, scoring my first try. I'll never forget. I can see it vividly in my mind, putting it down, and directly lying to everybody after the game, saying, oh yeah, I've scored before, so I didn't have to run a Zulu, right? A Zulu, yes, where you run around both goalposts with no clothing on in a rugby ball. Yes, that is a Zulu.
And when does that happen?
After you score your first try, and I totally lied to get out of it. Well, in terms of we had a lot of traditions. When I was president, I'm a very type A personality, and I can be kind of a jerk. And I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to do it this way right now. Let's go. Boom, boom, boom. So a game had been canceled, and every single person on the team knew about it. And so we're going through selections, and it seemed like everybody who we had been picking the previous weeks, they were changing everything around, and I'm playing prop that week, which was it's not what I was looking forward to doing, and and I'm just saying to myself, why do we want to lose this? And then the guy on the team that was supposed to book the bus for the away game is telling me, oh yeah, we don't have a bus this weekend. And then it just keeps going worse and worse and worse. And I'd say we got probably 95% of the way through selections when they told me that they were having a fake selections just to give me a hard time. They have the senior selections at the end of the year, and senior selections was great, where basically everybody on the team is invited, and the outgoing seniors, it's normally one of the last weeks of school, maybe during finals. Everybody in the team goes around and talks about, they says something, one senior will get up, and then every single person there says something about him on his way out, and then the next one, and I think something along that still goes along. Fairfield Rugby is probably one of the most tight-knit groups that I've ever been involved with, ever will be involved with. And it's something that transcends time. So, like I was saying to you before, I have somebody that's a senior on the rugby team is working for me now. And so the connection, when you come back for a game, an alumni event, with the kids that still go here, the guys that are 5 years younger, the guys that are 20 years older, there's an unspoken word that, oh, you played rugby at Fairfield. I just know exactly what that person's about, and knowing that you have, when you were here, knowing that you have all these friends in this close-knit community, and guys that not only will look out for you, but guys that you just want to hang out with and just be part of your life. It's hard to put it into words, but it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. and I still going to guys' weddings. You met 13, 14 years ago, right? Guys you're doing business with now. It's friendships that started kind of randomly that have lasted for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So I started playing rugby right out of college. I started playing for the White Plains Men's Club. One of my high school football coaches was a longtime member, and I got involved with them pretty quickly right after college. I was pretty active with them up until a couple years ago. So I played with them, pretty much nonstop for 8 years. And then I in the summers, for 4 or 5 years, I played rugby league. Okay, and I actually toured Australia with the USA Tomahawks and the rugby league, which was fun. But I played a lot of rugby, played Met Union, played for Northeast All Stars, a lot of but that. When I played in college, it was almost as if I really enjoyed rugby and I really enjoyed playing the game, but it was part of being a Fairfield rugby player was the whole package, right? You're part of a certain group of guys that's, a close-knit group, whereas men's rugby was more of an outlet and it was more about the sports because you just, you just don't have the time to be as social as it was. Right, and when you're sitting behind a desk for 10 or 12 hours a day, you really need your outlet, right? And so it was great for me for that. And while in college, I probably should have taken rugby seriously, rugby a little bit more serious. After college, I probably should have taken work a little bit more serious, but really played a tremendous amount of rugby. A lot of years. Started playing, going to practice in the end of January, and was playing until the beginning of December. I did that for 4 or 5 years straight, so a lot of rugby. In terms of the Fairfield impact, not as widespread as you would like it, right? There's a lot of great players that have come through Fairfield that are really kind of, at the end of Fairfield U, they're just kind of scratching the surface. In a couple of years at a higher level, they'd be a completely different player, and really playing at a much higher level, making an impact, and really seeing what the game has to offer. So, I would say I don't want to say it's disappointing, but definitely room for improvement in terms of the number of kids that are playing, for men's clubs in the summer and after they graduate, because rugby, really the sport itself is spectacular. There's a lot to be offered in terms of going out and playing, and the experiences that you can pick up.
Yeah.